My name is Lena Martinez, and for as long as I can remember, I've been driven by a singular purpose: to help others. It's why I became an oncology nurse. In the sterile, hushed corridors of St. Helena Hospital, I found meaning in providing care, comfort, and a fierce sense of advocacy for patients battling cancer. Every shift was a reminder of the fragility and resilience of the human spirit. My life wasn't glamorous, but it felt vital, important. I had always put others first. My patients, my colleagues, my family. So when my younger sister, Mia, my vibrant, funny, anchor-in-the-storm sister, was diagnosed with aggressive kidney failure, there was no hesitation. The doctors said she needed a transplant, urgently. I was a match. The decision was instantaneous, a quiet certainty in the face of overwhelming fear. I would give her my kidney. The surgery was scheduled swiftly. It meant taking unpaid leave from St. Helena, 6 weeks of recovery that would strain my finances, but that felt insignificant compared to Mia's life. My boss, Dr. Evelyn Harper, the chief administrator, was a figure known throughout the hospital for her sharp tongue and icy efficiency. She ran the administrative side of things with a ruthless focus on the bottom line, a stark contrast to the compassionate care delivered by the medical staff. When I informed her of my decision, requesting the leave, she gave me a rare, tight smile. "A noble choice, Lena," she'd said, her voice cool and detached. "St. Helena supports our staff in times of personal crisis. Ensure your patients are handed over properly." Her praise felt clinical, a checkmark on an HR form, but I didn't care. Mia was all that mattered. The surgery was a success. Mia's body accepted the new kidney. My own recovery was difficult, painful, slow. 6 weeks of incision pain, fatigue, and the quiet anxiety of having fundamentally altered my own body. But seeing Mia regain her color, her energy, her laughter, it was worth every ache, every sleepless night. I was weak, yes, physically, but my spirit felt stronger than ever. When I returned to St. Helena, 6 weeks later, cleared by my doctor and ready to resume my vital work, I walked into a nightmare. My desk in the oncology ward wasn't empty, waiting for me. It was occupied by a new hire, a young nurse looking overwhelmed by the stacks of charts. My keycard, which should have granted me access to the secure areas, beeped red and remained stubbornly inactive when I tried to swipe it. Confusion warred with a growing sense of unease. I walked towards Dr. Harper's office, the familiar hum of the hospital's fluorescent lights suddenly feeling cold, impersonal. She stood leaning against her office doorframe, arms crossed, her expression one of detached finality. "Dr. Harper?" I began, my voice hesitant. "My keycard isn't working. And there's someone at my desk." She didn't smile this time. Her eyes, cold and sharp, raked over me, lingering for a fraction too long on my still healing side. "Ah, Lena." "Yes. I was expecting you." "Expecting me?" My return was scheduled. Medical institutions, especially ones of St. Helena's caliber, need staff operating at peak capacity, Lena, she said, her voice devoid of sympathy. "Frankly, you're a liability now. A major surgery. An organ donation. We can't afford weakness." The word hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath. Weakness? Donating an organ to save my sister's life was weakness? "You're firing me?" I stammered, the reality slamming into me. Unpaid leave was one thing, expected. But outright dismissal? "Your position has been eliminated as part of a necessary restructuring," she stated, the same cold corporate language I had heard so often used to justify callous decisions. "Your duties have been absorbed." She pushed off the doorframe, walking back into her office, signaling the conversation was over. "HR will be in touch regarding your final paycheck." My protests, my stunned questions, were met with the closing of her office door. I stood there, rooted to the spot, the hum of the hospital's fluorescent lights drowning out the frantic beating of my own heart. Fired. For saving my sister's life. Because I was now perceived as weak liability. The injustice was breathtaking. That night, reeling from the shock, the betrayal, the sheer cruelty of it all, I received an email. Not from HR, but from an anonymous address. It was a formal complaint filed with the state medical board, accusing me of negligence during a chemotherapy treatment weeks before my leave. It detailed a specific patient, Mr. Thompson, claiming I had misdosed him with a highly potent chemotherapy agent, putting his life at risk. The complaint included falsified records, altered dosage logs that made it look like I had made a critical, life-threatening error. Panicked, I scoured my memories. Mr. Thompson. A kind, elderly man, battling a tough form of leukemia. I remembered his treatments, remembered meticulously calculating his dosages, double-checking everything. I was obsessive about patient safety. I had never made such a mistake. The records were falsified. Just like the reason for my dismissal was a lie. This wasn't just about firing me, it was about destroying my career, my reputation, ensuring I could never work as a nurse again. Dr. Evelyn Harper. She hadn't just fired me, she had framed me. As I stormed out of St. Helena, the place that had been my professional home, carrying nothing but my purse and a heart filled with a cold, burning rage, I spotted someone in the parking lot. A young man, looking lost and distressed. Mr. Thompson's son. I had met him a few times during his father's treatments. He saw me, his eyes widening in recognition. He walked quickly towards me, glancing nervously back at the hospital entrance. "Lena," he said, his voice low. "I saw you leaving. I need to show you something." He pressed a small thumb drive into my hand, his fingers brushing mine briefly. "It's about Dad. And his treatment." He knew something was off. He wanted me to look into it if anything happened to him. He hesitated, his gaze flickered towards the hospital. "Watch this. It might explain things." Before I could ask any questions, he slipped away, disappearing back into the vast, anonymous parking lot, leaving me standing alone, clutching a thumb drive that might hold the key to the nightmare I had just walked into. The thumb drive felt heavy in my hand, a potential lifeline in the ocean of despair. Back in the quiet solitude of my small apartment, a space that now felt too large without the comforting routine of work, I plugged the drive into my laptop. A single folder. Inside, video files. Low quality, shaky, clearly filmed discreetly. The footage showed snippets of Dr. Harper in her office, interacting with patient files. Deleting files. Renaming others. Tampering with records. But the critical moment, the actual alteration of Mr. Thompson's dosage logs, the moment the numbers were changed to make it look like I had misdosed him, that specific clip was missing. It was clear she was covering something up, deleting evidence of her own activities, but it didn't directly show her creating the false evidence against me. It was tantalizing, infuriating. Mr. Thompson's son had said his father knew something was off. He had secretly recorded his treatments. It was a detail that resonated with the quiet strength I remembered in Mr. Thompson. Even in his illness, he had possessed a keen intellect, a need for control in a situation that offered none. His secret recordings, his patient network of personal documentation, might hold the complete truth. Desperate, I reached out to Mr. Thompson's son, requesting to see his father's full collection of recordings. He agreed, his voice still filled with a quiet grief. I visited his home, a place that still held the faint scent of Mr. Thompson's pipe tobacco and a palpable sense of loss. His widow, a kind woman with weary eyes, led me to a back room. "He filmed everything, Lena," she said, her voice soft, handing me a dusty camcorder and a stack of VHS tapes. "Appointments, treatments, everything." Said it kept him in control. He was worried something wasn't right with his medication. I took the camcorder, the plastic warm against my skin, a tangible link to the man whose case was being used to frame me. I loaded the tapes into an old VCR, my hands shaking. Hours of footage flickered across the screen, Mr. Thompson's quiet dignity, his conversations with nurses, with doctors. And then, on a tape labeled "Final Session," a clip that made my blood run cold. The camera was positioned discreetly, capturing a wide view of the treatment room. Dr. Harper entered, her demeanor different from her usual icy efficiency. She was agitated, her voice low, urgent, speaking to a figure whose back was mostly to the camera, a shadowy outline against the bright hospital window. "Lena's too trusting," Harper hissed, her voice barely audible on the tape. "She follows procedure to the letter. This needs to look like her mistake. A fatal error that justifies her termination. The board agrees, we can't afford the optics of letting her go simply for donating an organ. This makes it cleaner." The shadowy figure nodded. "And the records? Are they clean?" "Almost," Harper replied. "Riley's handling the digital side. But the physical dosage logs. I need to swap them out. Blame the mistake on her during the transfer. By the time she figures it out, the board will have buried her. And we'll have streamlined operations without the liability." The shadowy figure turned slightly, just enough for a sliver of light to catch his face. It was him. Mr. Harrison. The CEO of St. Helena Hospital. Dr. Evelyn Harper wasn't acting alone. She had allies. Allies on the board. Allies in the CEO's office. They were colluding, not just to get rid of me, but to cut costs by eliminating positions, framing me as a liability, all under the guise of patient safety. The hospital wasn't just covering up, it was actively participating in the fraud. Before I could even fully process the horrifying implications of the footage, before I could decide how to use this undeniable proof of a hospital-wide conspiracy, the lawsuit arrived. St. Helena Hospital versus Lena Martinez. They weren't waiting for the medical board investigation. They were going on the offensive, suing me for negligence, demanding monetary compensation for the alleged misdosing of Mr. Thompson, using the falsified records as their primary evidence. It was a brutal, calculated move, designed to bankrupt me, to bury me under legal fees and public shame. Dr. Harper's smear campaign went viral, amplified by the lawsuit. Tabloids, eager for a sensational story, painted me as a reckless donor, who had endangered patients, who had prioritized family over patients. My act of self-sacrifice, my quiet dedication, was twisted into a narrative of irresponsibility and professional malfeasance. The stress was immense. My own health, still fragile from the surgery, suffered. And then, Mia's recovery faltered. A complication, a setback that required additional treatment. My fight for my name was now inextricably linked to my sister's health. I was trying to balance fighting a powerful institution with caring for my sister, the very reason I was in this mess in the first place. Mia, seeing the toll it was taking on me, the public humiliation, the legal battles, the strain on my limited resources, begged me to stop. "Lena, please," she'd pleaded, her voice weak. "It's not worth it. You're making it worse. Just let it go." Her fear, her worry for me, was heartbreaking. It was a moment of profound isolation. The person I had sacrificed for, the one who understood the cost, was asking me to surrender. But surrendering meant letting Harper win. It meant letting the CEO and the board get away with their callous restructuring, their disregard for patient safety, their willingness to sacrifice a dedicated nurse's career for the sake of their bottom line. It meant letting them endanger future patients with their cost-cutting measures. I couldn't do it. Then, a break, small but significant, emerged from the wreckage. I recalled a timid intern, Riley, who had rotated through the oncology ward weeks before my leave. He had seemed uneasy, overly stressed by the procedures. He had once mumbled something about Dr. Harper's special projects, something that didn't feel right. It was a long shot, but he might have seen something, known something. I tracked Riley down to a quiet diner near the medical school. He looked even more timid than I remembered, his eyes darting nervously. I explained my situation, the lawsuit, the falsified records, the camcorder footage of Harper's confession. His face paled as I spoke. She made me," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Dr. Harper. She threatened to ruin my career before it even started. Said if I didn't do exactly what she told me, I'd never get a residency. She made me fake some of the digital entries to match the altered physical logs she planned to swap. Riley admitted Harper forced him to fake the initial digital entries from Mr. Thompson's record, the ones that were later used as proof in the lawsuit. But the critical physical dosage logs swap, the one that would be undeniable proof of the real endangerment, was orchestrated by Harper herself with the pharmacist. Riley's task was to create a digital alibi, making my account seem consistent with the planned falsified physical records. He was a pawn, manipulated and terrified. "But I have proof," he whispered, his hands shaking. He reached into his pocket and handed me a burner phone. Recordings. Messages. Of her forcing me. Of her talking about the plan. I was scared. I knew it was wrong. Ending hook, as I left the diner, clutching the burner phone, a black SUV screeched into the parking lot, headlights blinding me. It was Dr. Harper's vehicle. Riley, seeing it, froze, then bolted in the opposite direction, disappearing into the night. I ran too, back towards my apartment. But I was too late. My apartment was trashed, furniture overturned, the camcorder and the final session tape, the one with Harper's full confession to the CEO and the mention of the pharmacist swap, were gone. Riley must have been followed, or worse, been a mole who led Harper right to my door after giving me the phone. The betrayal, layered upon betrayal, was almost too much to bear. Betrayal. It was a word that had become synonymous with my life. Harper's betrayal, the CEO's complicity, Mia's health setback, the community's judgment, and now, potentially, Riley's betrayal, leading Harper directly to my apartment and the crucial camcorder footage. He had given me the burner phone with proof of Harper forcing him to fake records, but perhaps that was just enough truth to make me trust him, while he served a larger purpose for Harper and her allies. The anonymous threats to Mia continued, stark text messages warning me to drop my case, to disappear. They knew my vulnerability. But seeing Mia's fear, coupled with her quiet encouragement after the news about Riley and the stolen camcorder, "Fight them, Lena. You're the strongest nurse I know," solidified my resolve. I wouldn't be silenced. The camcorder footage was gone, but I still had Riley's recordings on the burner phone, detailing Harper forcing him to fake digital entries. It was proof of part of the frame, but not the full picture of the orchestrated dosage swap and the CEO's involvement. Despair threatened to consume me again. The lawsuit was proceeding. Harper's smear campaign was working. Then, a memory surfaced. Mr. Thompson's son. He had mentioned his father filmed everything. Had he kept copies? Backup tapes? The thought sent a jolt of desperate hope through me. I raced back to Mr. Thompson's son's home, my heart pounding. He met me at the door, his face etched with worry when I explained the theft of the camcorder. Backup tapes, he mused, his brow furrowed. Dad was meticulous. He kept copies of everything. He had a separate storage unit for his most important files. Hours later, sifting through dusty boxes in a small, climate-controlled storage unit, we found it. A single VHS tape, labeled in Mr. Thompson's neat hand, final session, copy 2. It was the backup. It contained the full, unedited footage from that last treatment, including Harper's confession to the shadowy CEO figure, and the chilling conversation about swapping the physical dosage logs. Armed with this undeniable proof, not just of the framing, but of the deliberate endangerment of a patient's life, orchestrated by the hospital's top leadership, I knew I had to act. No more discreet police reports. No more legal battles fought in the shadows. This needed a public reckoning. The annual St. Helena Hospital Gala was scheduled for that weekend. An event filled with donors, board members, the very people who held the power. It was the perfect stage. With Mia's encouragement, and aided by a few loyal former colleagues who helped me navigate the hospital's security protocols one last time, I crashed the board meeting being held just before the gala. I walked into the room, the camcorder copy held tightly in my hand. Dr. Harper was there, looking confident, oblivious. Mr. Harrison, the CEO, was at the head of the table, radiating authority. "Dr. Harper," I said, my voice clear and strong, silencing the room. "Mr. Harrison. We need to talk about patient safety." Harper's face went ashen. Harrison's eyes narrowed. I didn't wait for them to react. I placed the camcorder on the table, connected it to the room's large display screen, and pressed play. Harper's voice, caught on tape, filled the room, chillingly detailing her plan to frame me, her motive of cutting costs by eliminating liabilities. Then, the CEO's face, clearly visible, his complicity in the plot laid bare. The footage showed them discussing swapping the dosage logs, the deliberate act of falsifying critical patient information, endangering not just Mr. Thompson, but potentially every patient whose records they might have manipulated for their restructuring. "You didn't just target me," I shouted, my voice echoing in the stunned silence after the tape ended. "You endangered every patient here. You compromised the integrity of this institution for the sake of your bottom line." Harper erupted, screaming denials, lunging towards the camcorder. Mr. Harrison, the CEO, his face a mask of cold fury, ordered me removed. But the board members, their faces pale with a dawning horror, didn't move. They saw the footage. They heard the confession. They understood the monumental liability they faced. Patient endangerment, fraud, cover-up, all exposed in one devastating tape. Fear of public scandal, fear of lawsuits from potentially hundreds of patients whose records might have been manipulated, fear of criminal charges. It galvanized the board. They turned on Harper. "Dr. Harper," the chairman of the board said, his voice trembling, "you are suspended, effective immediately." Before Harper could even fully register the words, the doors of the boardroom burst open. Police officers streamed in. Detective Ramirez, his expression grim, walked towards Harper. "Dr. Evelyn Harper," he stated, his voice clear and formal. "You're under arrest for fraud, endangerment, and conspiracy." Harper's screams filled the room as she was cuffed, her icy facade shattering completely. Mr. Harrison, the CEO, remained seated, his face a picture of shock and dawning despair, the board members staring at him with a mixture of fear and condemnation. While the outline didn't explicitly state his arrest at this moment, his role was undeniably exposed, his future at St. Helena hanging by a thread as the investigations into the hospital's practices, and his complicity, would now undoubtedly widen. The aftermath was swift and far-reaching. Dr. Evelyn Harper, convicted on multiple counts of fraud and endangerment based on the camcorder footage and Riley's corroborated testimony, was sentenced to a lengthy prison term. She was stripped of her medical license, her name permanently blacklisted from the medical community she had so grievously violated. The scandal rocked St. Helena Hospital. The CEO, Mr. Harrison, faced a furious board and the threat of criminal charges. He was swiftly removed, and investigations into the hospital's administrative practices and finances continued for months. The institution faced numerous lawsuits from patients and their families, forcing a complete overhaul of its leadership and protocols. My own life began to heal. The lawsuit against me was immediately dropped, my name publicly cleared. The medical board, reviewing the evidence of my frame-up, reinstated my license with a formal apology. The financial settlement from St. Helena Hospital for wrongful termination and the damages to my reputation was substantial. I didn't go back to work for St. Helena. That chapter was closed. Instead, I used the settlement to open a non-profit clinic in an underserved part of the city, a place that prioritized patient care over profits, where compassion was the guiding principle. It was a different kind of nursing, demanding but deeply rewarding, a direct counterpoint to the callousness I had experienced. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the clinic, surrounded by grateful patients, supportive colleagues, and Mia, looking healthier and more vibrant than ever, my sister pulled me aside. She handed me a gift, a beautiful new stethoscope. Engraved on it were words that brought tears to my eyes, "To the strongest nurse I know." Mia's words, etched into the metal, were the ultimate validation. I had faced betrayal, injustice, and the threat of ruin, all because I had been perceived as weak. But I had fought back, leveraging truth and resilience. My kidney donation had saved Mia's life. My fight had saved my career, my reputation, and potentially the lives of countless patients. I had been fired for being weak, but in that fight, I had discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. The scar on my side was a reminder of the sacrifice, but the stethoscope around my neck was a symbol of the nurse I was, the person I had become, strong, compassionate, and unwavering in my commitment to others.